We've heard Republicans criticize President Obama before for leading from behind, but Senator John McCain today says that President Obama is actually somewhat culpable for last week's horrific chemical attacks outside of Damascus and Syria. McCain told the Daily Beast Josh Rogan, Assad was able to use chemical weapons before and there was no response, and so why not do it again? This should surprise no one. They viewed that not as a red line, but as a green light, and they acted accordingly. Joining me now to talk about this are the co-hosts of CNN's Crossfire, S.E. Cupp and Van Jones. S.E., you were nodding your head up and down as I was reading that statement from John McCain. Yeah, look, I want to commend the president for finally following through on our red line threats. That's important. It's important for our credibility. But our strategy on Libya has been confused from the beginning. And this is one latest example of why we're confused. We're going in with limited airstrikes. For what purpose? Our own State Department and Pentagon have said it's not to change the course of the war. We've done this. We've done this in Libya. We went in, rattled around for a few days to urge Gaddafi's ouster. And then what? Libya was neither more safe. The region was not more stable. Al-Qaeda had not been eradicated. And we were the victims of terror attacks just a short time later. There's a lot of head nodding going on here. Van, you're nodding no. That would be head shaking. Sort of like the twerking and the shaking of my head is twerking. No. Twerking.
But no. Well, first of all, we have to be clear that this is time for us to come together. This was an absolute atrocity, what happened, and the president is taking strong action. And my problem is you have these people who want to do the Monday morning quarterbacking thing. How many wars do these people want us to get into in the Middle East? They're attacking him for not being more aggressive on Syria and Iran and Libya and Yemen. If it were up to his critics, we would be in land wars in 4 or 5 different countries right now. This president has now said there is a red line. It was not clear before whether the line was crossed. It's crossed. He's moving forward. I think we need to stand behind this president and send a clear message to Assad that this type of behavior is not acceptable.
But is John McCain off base? Do you think the statements of the president over the last year?
I am shocked to hear John McCain blaming our president for the actions of a madman and a mass murderer against his own people. It is despicable for John McCain to have said that. He owes an apology to this president. This president is not responsible for murder of the people of Syria. This president said very clearly, he said it 5 times, if we are sure that chemical attacks have been used, we're going to act. He is now acting. But I don't think that John McCain or anybody in the Republican Party should be blaming this president for the actions of a madman.
I don't even recognize this country anymore. I feel like under this administration, America has neither might nor a moral compass. We hide behind drone strikes and classified documents. We should absolutely intervene to stop the genocide of more than 100,000 people. We should absolutely intervene to stop Al-Qaeda and Islamic extremism from jihadizing yet another conflict. It is absolutely our obligation. And instead, we do the bare minimum to save face and pat ourselves on the back for our civility and our diplomacy. I think it's pathetic.
Well, first of all, I feel like I live in the United States of amnesia. Did the last 10 years not just happen? What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to go in there, start another land war in the Middle East? Now people are saying decapitate the regime. If you kill Assad right now, wonderful. You have a huge power vacuum. Who's going to fill it? Listen, people have a nostalgia for 1953 when the U.S. could just sort of thump out dictators like in Iran, put in their own. This is not the world we live in. It is a tough neighborhood over there. And the idea that we should have a more bloodthirsty and reckless president, I reject.
What about that red line, Van? It's been 12 months since President Obama laid down that red line. And, you know, it was pretty interesting today to hear the vice president speak. Vice President Joe Biden said he has got no doubt that Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons last week. But the vice president also said that the United States is convinced that he used chemical weapons before. So hasn't that red line been crossed already?
Well, listen, I don't think that we need to rush into war or rush into these strikes.
It's 2 years into the conflict, man.
Hey, listen.
100,000 people are dead. This is not rushing.
How many land wars do you want? Just answer the question. How many land wars do you want to have in the Middle East?
I never advocated to send boots on the ground to Syria today. What I've advocated for, and it's not Monday morning quarterbacking, because I've been on this story for 2 years, is right at the onset when we knew that Bashar al-Assad was killing his own people. Bashar al-Assad possessed chemical weapons. Bashar al-Assad had pipelines to Russia and Iran, and Bashar al-Assad had a pipeline to Hezbollah. I said right away, this is going to be a nightmare. Go in now, go in early, make it decisive, and then get the hell out.
Well,
here we are 2
problem.
years later.
But that's the problem. It's easy to rush in. It's hard to get out. And I think I am glad we have a president who understands. It's very easy. What we have with the other party is always a cheerleading for a cakewalk into quicksand. It's easy to go in by yourself. Then you own the problem and you can't get back out. This president, whether you're talking about Iran, where he built a global coalition, including China and Russia, to isolate them, whether you're talking about Libya, where he has built a global coalition, he's not leading from behind. He's building teams, and he's moving forward. And that's what you want.
There is a fetishization of building coalitions. You're supposed to
about not being stuck out there by yourself.
have a stated objective and build a coalition around it. This is the beach house philosophy. It's what I call the beach house philosophy. You want to buy a beach house, you can't afford it, right? You don't want to be responsible for it. So you get a bunch of your friends to go in and buy the beach house with you so that when someone breaks a lamp, you can say, not it, it's not my fault.
But
there should be an objective more long-term than avoiding responsibility.
Van, to use the beach house analogy here, isn't the U.S. the last one to buy into this beach house at this point? Because Britain and France have been talking about action in Syria for some time.
I think we all know that when the United States moves in, British and France, good allies, love them, but when we move in, it's a game changer, and we're going to move in. And I personally hope that the country will come together. We need to do two things. One, we need to get these airstrikes done. We've got to make sure he knows he cannot keep doing this. And then we need to have a real discussion in the country and in the Congress about where we go forward. And we should not rush into another land war in the Middle East.
Nassim?
Well, I agree that we need to have this conversation. I think Congress should be involved in this conversation. I think the president should embark on a public campaign to educate the American people about why intervention in Syria now is important. We might not agree with him.
Boots on the ground in Syria.
At this point, absolutely not. What we should have done was 2 years ago go in.
But now?
When the rebels numbered in the dozens and not the thousands.
What now?
Now we need a long-term strategy in that region and in other regions like the Maghreb and the remaining Middle East to eradicate al-Qaeda. And we should be saying to the world, wherever al-Qaeda goes, we will be there. I don't care about the politics of Syria or nation building or toppling a regime. What I care about is making sure that we keep al-Qaeda contained.
But do you actually agree on something, which would be remarkable, folks, here for a second, but do you both agree that your plans, both plans as they are, start soon with some kind of airstrike?
I think two things. Number one, we should have airstrikes this week. You cannot leave now this regime thinking it can just do these chemical attacks whenever they want to.
I agree with that.
So we agree on that. That's good. That's
Keep
good.
going.
And then number two, I think that before we do anything else, especially if it's going to involve any sort of flyovers, et cetera, is we need to have a discussion in the U.S. Congress. We do not need to go rushing into another land war in the Middle East.
Agree with that.
And the president on this, his legacy here, as people look back and see what he has done in the Middle East, and in particular Syria, how will it look?
Hey, listen, this president, again, I feel like I live in the United States of amnesia. The last administration wanted to rush into these land wars, and they left a huge mess. This president spent the past 5 years cleaning up those messes and trying to contain the rest. And I think he's going to be looked back on as a true leader. When you have Russia, the United States, and China all standing with this president against Iran, that's not leading from behind. That's building a team and leading from the front.
People have spent 6 years trying to figure out what the Obama doctrine is. They will spend another 60 because it is confused.